Let's talk volatility. Easiest to find in Bitcoin per usual, but it does have a competitor in futures today as well with nat gas on the move. Scott Bauer has been our go-to man for both this year. So Scott, let's talk BTC first, all right? Because this thing has been getting hit hard. It's now down almost 50% from the year-to-date high. How do you want to handle it as a trader?
All right, we got to look at the glass half full part of it, though. It's also up, from its 3,000 low, right?
That's true.
So there's two ways to look at it. However, Oliver, the news recently is not good, obviously. And, as a trader, you can look at all the technicals in the world here, and there's still actually some bullish overall signs. Even though the near-term pattern was very bearish when it couldn't break back through 8,500 or so to the upside, that was bearish. From a technical standpoint, which I'm not looking at technicals anymore in this, at least not in the near future here. It actually does stand to be a little bit bullish here. However, it is so news and just driven by what we see in coming out of China this time, coming from, or what we haven't seen from the SEC. And every time this thing consolidates, Oliver, and you and I talk about this all the time, every time we see a consolidation for a matter of weeks, low volume, very, very little volatility, very, very little intraday swings, this thing is set up for such a major move one way or the other, and it didn't disappoint us over the last week or so.
When we were talking about 10,000 and the breakage from there, Scott, our conclusion was that whichever way it went, if it bounced back to highs or broke lower, that it was going to be a big move. To me, the logic for the lower break has always been the most compelling. And then once it does break, it's like, all right, well, where do we go from here? It's interesting when you mention the technicals, because to me, it looks like the lower highs, the lower lows are starting to really form for this thing. But I get the point to where it's, it's hard to figure out, okay, at what point is enough, or if there's no real progress on some of these so-called fundamental stuff or widespread adoption, then, it's like, where's the floor? How far does it go down?
Yeah, and 6,500, where it actually hit earlier today, was some pretty serious support. Now, maybe that's just a interim bounce here, and it bounced pretty significantly. In fact, if you look at volume-wise here, CME Bitcoin futures today are about 10,000 contracts, the highest it's been in a very long time. It did bounce off of there, but the interesting thing is, overall, when we've seen these kind of sell-offs in the past, we've also seen that Bitcoin dominance kind of go down a little bit. Bitcoin dominance meaning how much their market cap is compared to the entire market cap of the entire crypto space. It's still about 67%. So it's still dominating the space. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. I don't know if it means just that, this is the leader in a space that's going to zero, or if people are still kind of believing in the digital currency space, but really only Bitcoin. Now,
this is where it gets interesting. And by the way, if we pull up a 2-year chart, hey, perfect, there it is. Read my mind. Because the 65-ish area was where we had a lot of horizontal action last year. So if there is going to be some support in around here, maybe that's where it is. I like that observation. Scott, the thing here that I'll ask is, look, if we're seeing this play out where the paranoia trade of the beginning of the year and everybody hunting for their store of value of choice or their hedge against central bank-driven chaos of choice, it's like, look, the financial system isn't being uprooted quite yet, it appears. And that kind of meme of, short the system and long BTC, if that's not working out, then do you want to just steer clear until the winds blow back in, Bitcoin's favor?
I do, as both a trader and an investor. I mean, to me, this is in the middle of no man's land. The other thing also is we've talked so much how, Bitcoin has kind of been a safe haven go-to, safe haven asset.
Traded like gold.
This big... Right, but this big dump here is not because of any sort of safe haven, asset class. I mean, gold is still hanging in there. This one is really due to what came out of China. So, that kind of takes that notion of the safe haven asset there a little bit and gives it a little bit of a disconnect.
Okay, so this is a really important point. I know I like this point, so I'm glad you bring it up, because to me, I'm watching BTC, and the next one I go to is gold, all right? Because given that they had such sharp moves together, from the spring into the summer, then the case that a lot of the Bitcoiners make is very similar to the case I hear the gold bugs make. Now, to your point, the gold chart hasn't broke down, and Bitcoin still has a lot more to prove than gold. So I think that expecting bigger swings is definitely true. But in terms of trend direction, do you think that it might give us some insight into how the gold case might trade as well?
You know, I don't yet. I mean, again, I keep referring to this. You and I have talked about this often, and I think there's still not enough data points. This hasn't been traded long enough to make that correlation between Bitcoin and gold yet, in that they move in tandem with one another. So I don't look at this move in Bitcoin and say, oh my God, I got to go out and short gold by any stretch of the imagination.
All right, well, we're going to watch. Let's talk some nat gas, Scott. I like it because we've been talking about this thing, and all of a sudden the weather turns a little bit, and Natty's getting slammed today, 5% down.
I must have used your line at least 10 people today about calling it the Widowmaker, and I always, I give you the kudos to that. But yeah, I mean, we saw the spike up, the momentum trade when we got that kind of Arctic blast a couple weeks ago earlier in the month. But now all of a sudden you get some milder weather, and man, we just hit that area that we saw around, what was it, a little over 280, 282, which was major resistance, couldn't break through it, and poof, down away we go. And then, you look at not only just the weather patterns, now look at some of the fundamental news that's coming out. You've got Qatar coming, the country of Qatar, not C-U-T-T-A-E-R, but, Qatar, I think that's how you pronounce it, coming out saying that they're ramping up their production in the next 7 years by almost 65%.
Wow.
You have natural gas supplies in the U.S. just building and building and building, and this is where is this thing going to go unless we get some sustained weather pattern over the next 4 to 6 weeks that is sustainable, not just a blast. I mean, I just don't see how this thing is going to rally back up past that 280 mark.
Yeah, all right. Nicely done, Scott Bauer. Really good stuff. As always, Mr. B, appreciate it. Love the talk on BTC, Nat Gas, the volatility talk of the day. Scott is the CEO of Prosper Trading Academy. We'll be right back. Let's bring in our